You are looking at a screen right now. You feel like you are seeing a continuous, seamless video of reality. Your vision feels like a perfect, unbroken stream of light flowing directly into your mind. But the real answer is far stranger. Your brain is lying to you. You are completely blind for roughly 40 minutes every single day, and you never even notice. How is that physically possible? To understand the massive gap in your perception, run a very simple physical experiment. Look away from the screen for a moment. Look at a doorway or a wall across the room. Now look back at this screen. Your eyes just moved. It felt incredibly smooth. It felt instantaneous. But during the tiny fraction of a second your eyes were in motion, your brain completely shut off your vision. It literally cut the video feed. This invisible phenomenon is called saccadic masking. Why does your brain do this to you? Because your eyes are essentially highly advanced biological cameras. If you hold a physical camera and whip it rapidly from side to side, you do not get a clear picture. You get a nauseating blur of smeared light. If your brain actually processed the raw visual data of your eyes jumping around, you would spend your entire life feeling violently seasick. So your nervous system engineered a highly deceptive solution. It simply edits the blur out of your consciousness. In the late 1800s, a French ophthalmologist named Louis-Émile Javal made a startling observation. He was quietly watching people read books. Before Javal, scientists assumed that when you read a line of text, your eyes glide smoothly across the words like a fluid spotlight. Javal realized they do not glide at all. They jump. They dart violently from word to word, pausing for a tiny fraction of a second to absorb data, and then jumping again. He called these rapid, violent jump saccades. An experimental psychologist named Raymond Dodge decided to investigate these jumps further. Dodge tried to observe his own saccades using a mirror. He stood very close to the glass. He looked directly at his left eye. Then he quickly shifted his focus to his right eye. He was actively trying to catch his own eyes in the act of moving. He failed completely. No matter how fast he shifted his focus back and forth, his eyes were always perfectly still in the reflection. A friend standing next to him could easily see his eyes darting back and forth. But Dodge was entirely locked out of his own biological movement. His brain was actively deleting the visual input of the movement itself. Your brain is not just a passive receiver of light. It is a highly aggressive video editor. When your eyes prepare to jump to a new target, a signal is sent deep into your visual cortex. The brain forcefully turns down the dial on your visual perception. It effectively presses the mute button on your optic nerve. In the late 1990s, visual scientist John Ross at the University of Western Australia proved exactly how powerful this mute button is. Ross had test subjects sit inside a dark laboratory. He asked them to dart their eyes from one point to another. Right in the exact middle of that rapid eye movement, he flashed incredibly bright, high-contrast visual patterns directly into their field of view. If the subjects were sitting perfectly still, the patterns were impossible to miss. But during the saccade, the subjects saw absolutely nothing. Their eyes physically absorbed the bright light. The raw data traveled down the optic nerve toward the brain, but the brain intercepted the signal and threw the data straight into the trash. It decided the information was blurry, so it never let it reach conscious awareness. This aggressive deletion happens tens of thousands of times every single day. You make about 3 to 5 of these violent eye jumps every single second. When you add all of those tiny blind spots together, they equal roughly 40 minutes of total blindness every single day. Almost an hour of your life is spent entirely in the dark. So why doesn't your life look like a flickering strobe light? Because your brain does something even more incredible than deleting the blur. It literally travels back in time. Think about what happens when you look at a ticking analog clock on a wall. Have you ever glanced over at a clock and felt like the second hand was completely frozen? That first second seems to take twice as long as all the seconds that follow it. This is a documented psychological phenomenon called chronostasis. The word translates to the stopping of time. Chronostasis happens because your nervous system hates empty space. When your eyes dart over to the clock, you are blind for a fraction of a second. When your eyes finally land perfectly on the clock face, your vision turns back on. But your brain knows that a sudden, empty black gap in your reality would be terrifying to experience. So it takes the fresh, clear image of the clock and projects it backward in time. It retroactively fills the dark gap. It tells your conscious mind that you were looking at the perfectly clear clock the entire time your eyes were moving. Your brain is feeding you a fabricated memory of the past to hide the fact that you were just temporarily blind. Where did this elaborate illusion come from? Go back hundreds of thousands of years to the dangerous open plains of the ancient savanna. Your ancestors were navigating an incredibly chaotic environment, tracking fast-moving prey. If their visual field smeared into a confusing blur every single time they moved their eyes, they would become disoriented and highly vulnerable. Evolution did not prioritize a completely accurate representation of physics. Evolution prioritized keeping you alive. It decided that 40 minutes of invisible blindness was a perfectly acceptable price to pay for a stable map of the world. This brings up a deeply unsettling question. If your brain is willing to confidently edit out 40 minutes of your visual life every day, what else is it hiding from you right now? You trust your senses completely. You believe you are experiencing the world in real time, but you are actually experiencing a heavily delayed, highly polished final cut of a movie your brain is directing. It aggressively deletes the blur of your eye movements. It deletes the permanent physical blind spot in the exact center of your vision where your optic nerve attaches. It paints over the darkness with a confident lie. Your reality is stitched together with thousands of tiny, invisible blackouts. Look away from the screen right now. Look at a doorway. Look back. You just went completely blind, and you never even noticed. You are looking at a screen right now.